3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Welcome to Roots of Reality. I'm your host, Ben Baumann, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Phase 8, the intellectual revolution of the ancient world. So going back about 2,500 years ago, something amazing happened in the ancient world. All of a sudden, people began thinking and asking questions about life in ways never done before. And these people were the great thinkers of the ancient world. So now I will describe a few of these major thinkers and some of their big ideas which remain relevant to understanding the modern world today, as well as life in general. Thus, going back 2,600 years ago, we come across Cyrus the Great, the king of the Persian Empire and what is modern-day Iran. Perhaps Cyrus the Great's greatest contribution to the ancient world was his respect for human rights as a ruler. In the age of where civilizations were brutally conquered with the intent of destroying another's culture and replacing with their own, Cyrus the Great was different. Though he was a man of conquest, the people that he conquered, he respected. As long as they would accept him as their new ruler, he would allow them to continue their cultural and religious traditions in peace, showing an incredible respect for human rights which no one else was doing at the time. And as a result of this, he was respected by many people that he conquered, and even would go on to inspire future conquerors like Alexander the Great. Next, also about 2,600 years ago, we have the Greek philosopher Xenophanes, who challenged the norms of society. For example, he criticized society for caring about wealth and power rather than morality and what's best for people. And when it came to religion, he argued that people shouldn't anthropomorphize the gods, meaning making them seem like us as human beings. They shouldn't put our own human flaws onto the gods due to our desire to relate to them. And at the same time, we shouldn't be biased, arguing that their religion is more correct than others for no reason. Essentially stating that you can believe whatever you want, but you cannot prove your beliefs are more true than another, since your belief is just your opinion. But opinions do not represent what is necessarily true. Now, Xenophanes was not an agnostic or anti-religious, but rather he was just recognizing that even his own religious beliefs were just beliefs, but not things that he himself could prove to be true. Another great ancient thinker of the ancient world takes us about 2,500 years ago in ancient China by the name of Confucius. Confucius thought a lot about how people can become their best selves. For instance, he believed that people can become better and that as people we are responsible for our own actions. He argued that life is short, but we have the power to determine what we accomplish in our lives and what we will be remembered for. Thus, for Confucius, self-restraint and discipline were very important, and he was also a big believer in education and that only real education comes from hard work and studying, while at the same time, a balance must be maintained between learning and thinking for yourself, which he argued a person needed both to be successful. Then we have, also about 2,500 years ago, in ancient India, Buddha, who was incredibly concerned about helping people stop suffering. He argued that people suffer in many different ways, whether that be physically, as we age or become ill or injured, but at the same time, we suffer mentally, because we as humans often find ourselves disappointed with life because we are only temporarily satisfied in life. For example, often we are happy one day and then we are no longer happy for a different reason the next day, because we always want more. We're never satisfied. Thus, Buddha believed that if one could develop the right mentality on life and live by that mentality, a person can free themselves from this constant cycle of suffering, which can be reached, for example, through things like being disciplined, being a good person, behaving properly, and being focused. About 100 years later, around 2,400 years ago, in ancient Greece, we then have the Greek philosopher Plato, who talked about the human soul, love, and seeking the truth, among many other things. And Plato argued for the idea of a soul based on three parts: the rational part that loves truth, and which he considered was the most important part of the soul because it was based on the idea of reason. Then he said there was a second part, the spirited part, which loves honor and victory. And lastly, there was the appetite part of the soul, which desires food, water, and reproduction, essentially a person's biological urges. And he argued that if these three parts do their job and don't contradict each other, your soul will be healthy. However, he felt that a major danger is one's ability to control their biological urges, which can interfere with a person's reasoning and harm their soul. When it comes to love, Plato argued against a superficial love that ultimately was based solely on one's physical appearance, and that this type of love is actually a waste and harmful. And Plato felt that this is the most common form of love and one that people are constantly falling victim to. Lastly, and perhaps the most important idea that Plato thought of was when it came to seeking the truth. Plato explains that how we understand the world is divided into two realms: the visible, which we grasp with our senses, and the intellectual, which we only grasp with our mind. You see, the visible world is the universe we see around us, and the intellectual world is based on knowledge. And Plato felt only those who can view the world through an intellectual lens, beyond what they see, can know anything at all. Because what appears to us in the world through our senses is actually deceiving and can trick us, because our senses are prone to error. They make mistakes. As Plato once described when it came to his work, The Allegory of the Cave, in summary, if you were born in a cave and never leave that cave, you will think that that cave represents all that there is to know when it comes to existence. But only by leaving that cave can you actually discover the truth. Next, going back to China, about 2,400 years ago, we have Mencius, who came up with ideas about how society should be organized. For example, he felt that the ruler of a society has the responsibility to provide people with an appropriate livelihood and a moral and educational guidance. He felt economically it was best for society to have fewer taxes, free trade, and a conservation of natural resources, as well as welfare measures for the old and disadvantaged and economic equality among people. Then, lastly, we have the ancient Greek philosopher Pyrrho, who is considered the father of skepticism, and he argued that all human knowledge involves uncertainty. Essentially that nothing is ever guaranteed to be true. Therefore, in conclusion, I think a major takeaway from all this and all these great philosophers and thinkers of the ancient world who made numerous contributions to modern intellectual thought and continue to be read by modern society is that no matter who you are, where you are from, or what you believe, all we can do is be the best person that we can be and do the best to seek the truth and be honest with ourselves as the ancient minds once did. And hopefully, we can help make this world we call home a better place. If we can do that, then no matter what happens, we can be satisfied with the life that we live. Therefore, as always, remember, 13.8 billion years led to you, so make the most of it.